What's up, everybody? Welcome to Gojo with Mike Golick Jr. That is me. With me, as always, a man whose verification on social media you can trust, Brandon Newman. Brandon, what's going on?
Yeah, because it's non-existent, Mike. I don't want a gray check. I don't want a blue check. I'm thorough in these streets.
Oh, man, it's gotten
verified in these streets. What am I saying?
It's gotten exactly where we expected on Twitter very quickly with this man Elon, who basically came out and said the other day, we're going to continue to do dumb things and try them, and if they don't work, do different things, as we have seen Twitter experiment with various degrees of verification that led us to yesterday already the thing that we said would happen happening. And this is in the comparative, easy place of sports, where it is someone impersonating Adam Schefter, circulating news that the Raiders had parted ways with Josh McDaniels as their head coach. It was very much not ESPN's Adam Schefter, but rather someone who had just paid for the new blue check mark and decided to go do the thing that Ballsack Sports and other people have been doing to sports media for a while. And as we are coming up and finishing midterm elections right now, I am really glad that this started after so much of that began happening, because my God, what a terrifying slippery slope to hell.
A terrifying slippery slope indeed. One that, if they knew the power that they had, Mike, if they could create a fake FBI account, a fake CIA account, but no, we're orchestrating LeBron trades from the Lakers, and Josh McDaniel being fired from the Raiders.
Which, again, I want to reiterate off the top, because we are a podcast here at Gojo that you should download, subscribe, rate, and review, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel that is dedicated to finding the actual truth and making sure we parse through and don't get got by the internet so that you don't get got by the internet. Because we said from day one we were going to be your timeline in your ears, and we're trying to show you right now it's time to keep your head on a swivel, because we saw plenty of people that are verified in the old way of verified, that are supposed to be reliable media sources, getting got by this when you're scrolling the timeline quick looking for news, because damn it, that's what they are going to attempt to do, these new world blue check marks.
And as someone that's just a man of the people and gullible as hell, I'll be the one to bring news to your attention, just so Mike can correct it. But make sure you listen when Mike corrects it, because I'll come up here with some shit that is just not true on the internet.
Exactly. And we're going to try and parse that out and make sure that we figure it out, because man, oh man, this is going to be a lot to keep track of. Really not looking forward to that, Brandon. Really looking forward to today's show, though. We got a great one. We are excited. Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame's head football coach, is going to join us fresh off. I say fresh off. It's a Thursday, so he's had some time to recover from their win over Clemson. Talking about,
I know that's a big one.
It was. The reverb of that one is strong. So we'll talk to Marcus about what it was like on the field after the Clemson win, what they've got coming up down the stretch of the season as Notre Dame is back and ranked in the latest round of the college football playoff poll, and finding a like-minded individual and understanding that you can start decorating for Christmas as soon as you damn well want. Marcus Freeman is a man who gets it. I am.
No,
so
he's a man who gets it, but he's also someone who is he knows what the people want, Mike. Like coaches never half-ass any idea. So when you hear of an idea that you don't agree with from a coach, it sounds more legitimate, more verified, if you will, than it ever has. So I'm a big Thanksgiving decoration guy, but Marcus Freeman got me thinking about skipping it.
You know what? And I hope everyone else gives him a chance. Hear him out. He's a great guy. We're excited to talk to him there. We also have a very interesting list that came out relative to NFL coaches and the history of the chocolate chip cookie that you will not want to miss, because people saw the tweet going around yesterday, and we've got a little added context to a particularly political chocolate chip cookie tweet that we want to get to. But in the meantime, Brandon, the association kind of has the middle of the week right now during the NFL week where stuff happens and we kind of perk our ears up every now and then. First and foremost, I wanted to do a wellness check on you. LeBron James left last night's loss to the Clippers with what is now being billed as a groin injury that they're going to get some imaging done on today. The 2-9 Lakers and an injured LeBron, who had a hell of a game. Now they lost, but he had 30 points and a bunch of other good counting LeBron stats that came along with that. How you feeling? You okay?
Yeah, actually, I'm okay because the Lakers are bad anyways. What are they? Two and a number. They've won 2 games, 2-9. Yes. I feel like the same way the first 2 minutes or the first 15 plays of a game is scripted for the NFL. Like, I feel like the beginning half of the season before Christmas for the NBA and for LeBron is already scripted. Like, they went through the trainers, they realized it's going to be a groin thing, or he landed wrong. And as much as he wants calls from the refs for when he gets fouled up, I think he knows how to take those fouls and knows how to extrapolate certain things to be out for the next X amount of games. I'm not worried about this, Mike, specifically, but I am starting to worry about LeBron's training on the offseason. Like, he's spending all that money on his body and he's getting banged up in November after the season just started. I think maybe just do some box jumps. Maybe just stand on your roof and like jump down on something, because it seems like when he lands, there's an issue. Like, he's okay with jumping, he's okay with shooting, he's okay with rebounding. Landing messes LeBron up.
Brandon, he's old. This is just what happens when you're old. He's 37 years old. Brandon, I was talking to someone the other day. I have such an appreciation for people like our buddy Kyle Rudolph, who's playing with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers right now, who gets up and goes to work in a sport that's incredibly physical. But even for LeBron James, like, I always say that the NBA is a physical league. It's a contact league. It's not a collision league. That's the difference between that and the NFL, right? But either way, think about what you've got to do for physical activity at this point. Like, I've got a half-hour warm-up when I go to the gym. I've got a foam roll every day just so my hips and back all can feel good enough to go and do all this stuff. And I am asked to do nothing dynamic on the other side of that. Like, I go and I get on the treadmill for a little bit. I push things in a straight line. I maybe mix in an Orange Theory every now and then, or like a Pilates class. I'm not having to go out and cut and react to somebody else and be dynamic. And so I think about the amount of times that I have hurt myself in the gym just doing those things as a 30-something-year-old adult. And then I think, wow, what if I was still trying to get ready for the rigors of an entire season of a sport? And then that sport's at the highest level. Like, no wonder we see these guys getting... No wonder Julio Jones is never on the field consistently anymore. No wonder we worry about this with LeBron James more and more now. It's insane. That's why even Tom Brady playing quarterback and be able to do this not hurt is sort of insane, because just by existing north of 30, you are at risk of injury if you're in an athletic setting.
Yeah, what's the oldest kicker right now in the NFL? We used to always fantasize about...
It used to be Adam Vinatieri, just like sitting there.
Vinatieri.
Yeah, it was him all the time.
Yeah. Exactly. Okay, but I'll say this though, Mike, because as someone who doesn't get to the gym very often, I think our youngest son is 9 months old. You could probably use that as the last time I went to a gym. So I do push-ups around the house. I was showing Carter how to do cartwheels yesterday, so I did about 4 or 5
Carter
in a
wheels.
row, very athletic ones. You know how I'm surprisingly athletic for how big I am. But I'm hurting now, Mike. Like, I hurt on the other ends of that. I hurt on the other side of that. But, Mike, the difference between you and I and LeBron James is we don't spend millions of dollars on our body so that we can recover from those things. If anything, I spend thousands of dollars on my body to make it so I can't recover from those things by the things that I put in them. So, like, I can understand me not being able to bounce back from inflation of the shoulders after doing some cartwheels. LeBron being able to recover from his groin from landing.
But like, that's what I'm saying.
Mike.
I'm saying it's, first off, the notion of you comparing your cartwheels with your son to LeBron James is an absolute chef's kiss moment. The Stugotz is so strong in you, and I couldn't love it more. But no, Brandon, like,
they're
it's
good cartwheels, Mike.
At some
really
point,
good.
like, it's the Father Time ad. Like, I know he's got that running right now, but like, it's like, at some point you can spend all the money that you want on that. You're not going to outrun just what happens by nature. So fascinated to watch that with LeBron. He was not the only news in the association last night, Brandon.
Yes.
So we got a bit of a curveball from the Brooklyn Nets, who for so long had been linked to Ime Udoka after firing Steve Nash as their former head coach. Everyone thought, we had all the reports from Woj that they were circling around suspended Celtics head coach Ime Udoka, who was an assistant with the Nets in the 2020-2021 season. And then we get the news. No, they're pulling the interim tag off Jacque Vaughn, who's been an assistant there for 6 years, and making him the head coach with a deal that goes through the 2023-2024 season. Jacque Vaughn was 2-2 as the interim head coach. He won his first game as the head coach and had the cool moment with Kevin Durant after the game when the guys all gave him the game ball. They went out there and put it on the Knicks pretty enthusiastically. Kevin Durant's on a tear right now as far as his individual performance, and I think has won 13 straight on his own against the New York Knicks. So that's very much feels like a hammer and nail situation there right now. But Brandon,
or a personal thing for him.
Yeah, especially in that city. But Brandon, this one was incredibly surprising to me just because we figured with the connection with what Ime Udoka had put on tape last year and the fact that Jacque Vaughn had been a candidate for this job before the Steve Nash hiring and was passed over for this, we thought that opportunity with this organization may have come and gone. And it sounds like I saw reports from Mark Stein and I think it was Mark Stein who put it in his Substack that there were, I think, people behind the scenes that were reportedly trying to persuade the Nets to not go after Ime Udoka, considering they're still dealing with the suspension to Kyrie Irving in their organization right now. There's been so much noise there. This felt like the first thing that was about basketball in a while that just allowed it to go be basketball on the court for a little bit for this team.
I hear you. I thought possibly it could be about basketball because of just how decorated Vaughn is, but it feels more like it's PR. It feels more like like when Lovie Smith was hired to take over the Texans. It felt like they were pressured into making the right decision.
And that's, you know what, that's a fair read of the situation, and I shouldn't give the Nets that much credit because unfortunately that's probably what it is. And all of it feels like it's still shuffling deck chairs in the Titanic for right now, right? Because saying that this would actually be some indication of calm on the way, which you're right, it doesn't seem like, it seems like the Nets are constantly trying to battle against the notion that they're in control of whatever is happening with their organization. And I think that's, we saw even in the reports about this that like, I think I saw a report from Sean Marks or one of the people at the top of the organization saying this was not Kevin Durant's decision because so many people had been talking about what Kevin Durant wanted as far as the coach. And you've got this situation with Kyrie Irving, which we'll get to in a second. And so, yeah, this does not seem like a franchise that necessarily is in control of things right now. But this is one where, as we talk about someone's coaching bona fide, so much that's been the conversation this week. I think there's a lot of people rightly, genuinely excited for Jacque Vaughn, who seems to have been a really well-respected assistant around there. Did a couple of seasons as the head coach, 2+ seasons as a head coach for the Orlando Magic from 2012 to 2015. Had been the interim head coach for about 10 games during the 1920 season. So, has been building towards this, especially with this franchise. Like, he's been with the Nets through the transition from what they were into who they are now. And so on the other side of this, it's certainly interesting with that. But Brandon, the other part of this is all circling around whenever Kyrie Irving's return happens to the NBA. And because this is the next source of thing they're going to have to deal with, right? When Kyrie gets back in front of the media again, he's currently suspended. He has to address the media. He's going to get back on the court and what that's going to look and sound like, because the Nets introduced some terms to Kyrie's reinstatement into the league. They said that there are 6 steps for Kyrie Irving after we saw that Instagram apology last week. That includes apologizing for the tweet and condemning it. He did that on Instagram. The Nets want him to apologize verbally while meeting with the media. He agreed to donate $500,000 to anti-hate causes. He also has to undergo sensitivity training, anti-Semitic training, meet with Jewish leaders, and meet with Nets owner Joe Tsai. He also had a conversation with NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. And Brandon, I saw a lot of people reacting to this because, again, I think everything's going to draw a pretty strong reaction with Kyrie Irving at this point. This has become a lightning rod conversation for a lot of reasons that we've dealt with on this podcast. Right. But I think I'm interested in the concept of what's happening here, because right now we've seen Jaylen Brown come out as someone who's a part of the Players Association talking about, I think we're going to appeal this suspension and the way that this is being laid out for his return, because it's been pointed out that according to him that there's no guideline that addresses social media posts in the NBA's collective bargaining agreement. So often these punishments go back to stuff like that. But Brandon, in a world where we've seen more and more outcry from the public when athletes do things and then are getting ready for the return to play. When we talk about a notion of second chances or someone's contrition and why they should be allowed back on a court other than their overwhelming physical gifts, one of the cries from the public has been transparency about the work that's being done, right? What is someone doing in order to find their way back to the court? And I think it's something interesting to consider, because what the Nets are essentially trying to do here is show their work. And I think it's show their work to fans who might feel like they were hurt, show their work certainly to prospective advertisers who look at this situation and feel like they've got to back away from this. We know Kyrie Irving himself has dealt with some setbacks on that front as well with Nike and his partnerships based on what's gone on with this. And so I think it's interesting to consider, one, this as something we see more organizations do. I mean, listen, I want to, separate very clearly the two things going on here. But when we look at Deshaun Watson, who's getting ready to come back to the NFL in just a couple of weeks after an 11-game suspension, we hear all the time from teams about how we're creating environments for this player to come in here and be, rehabilitated and do better. And we never actually hear about or see any of that and what's going on. And we never get updates on that. And there's not a lot of detail in the way that those things are administered publicly. And I look at this and I go, all right, if you were able to take this idea and transpose it into more of those areas when it says, no, if this player is going to be a part of our team after, in those cases, committing some sort of very heinous off-the-court crime or being accused to that or being punished for that by the league, these are going to be the things that we as an organization need to see in order to feel comfortable having them back in our locker room environment as a face and as a part of our team. I think that's something that could be very worthwhile. I do just wonder, like in this case with what Jaylen Brown mentioned, is what is a players' association going to allow for when it comes to punishments that are usually collectively bargained, and how much are they going to push back?
Yeah, Mike, I think that's important, because as much as these companies and leagues like to try to use these individual instances and people and players and actors as kind of the example, like the lead by example, like this is what happens if you tweet something that is against our policy of how players should conduct themselves in public.
And Brandon, I just want to say
all
to that,
of these things
I
that
just
are
want to
happening.
say to I just want to say to that standpoint, I want to very much
Please.
remove that conversation about Deshaun Watson and others. I'm pulling this out of this particular situation that we can address. And I'm not trying to create false equivalencies or anything like that. I'm merely taking this concept and trying to apply it elsewhere. Now, we can talk about how this applies to Kyrie Irving specifically in this case, because I know there's been a lot of people that have been reacting to that. So I just wanted to make that abundantly clear for people think because this is what happens when you've got suspensions involved in this stuff, is we start to do the comparative justice thing, and I don't want to do that right now. I'm looking at that part of the process in particular. So I'm sorry for interrupting you. I just wanted to make that abundantly clear.
No, thank you for doing so, because I'm trying to articulate the fact that what Jaylen Brown is bringing up is that this is a solution for Kyrie, someone who is a habitual line stepper when it comes to the gray areas of what athletes are allowed to do off the court, right? And I'm not talking about the vaccine mandates, but more so of how he sees the job, right, Mike, and the punishment that comes along with it. Like, I think one of the things that are important to notice is, like, one of his cause of stipulations is that $500K to causes against anti-hate, like that's a percentage of one game for Kyrie to play, right? So I think all that stuff matters and variable when it comes to what actual punishment is going through right now. But my thing is, there still doesn't seem to be a guidelines or stipulations or clauses for when this happens again, when someone and obviously it doesn't happen frequently enough, but it needs to be. There's some kind of guidelines and stipulations need to be put in place.
What you're talking about
when
is
these
precedent.
things happen to a Kyrie Irving,
Yeah, you're talking about creating a precedent,
we need this to be consistent.
Players associations exist to protect precedent. They exist to protect the rights of players from leagues who would try to impose things in a one-time basis that end up affecting a larger, broader swath of players. And what you're talking about is just that.
Right.
And that's why I to an extent, I understand what Jaylen Brown and what someone from a players association would do anytime there is a league that comes in and tries to punish to a certain extent. And we've seen this in the NFL with some, of the things that we talked about here, some of the other where you come in, and even Deshaun Watson's suspension, they pointed to precedent as far as what there had been suspensions for in similar situations beforehand and how that language was in the collective bargaining agreement. So you're absolutely right about that. That's what this is protecting against.
Well, but I need that protection because of the sensitivity that surrounds how black players are, and I'm trying to find a better word, but policed when it comes to infractions to whatever they're supposed to be doing as employees of the NBA, Mike. And that's why I want there to be a little bit more guidelines so that we can have some consistency with the punishments when they come out, because Kyrie is who Kyrie is, it feels like he's being punished for a multitude of things.
Well,
which he is, but is it all tied to the tweet?
Well, this is, I think, tied to the fact that...
Is it all tied to the not apologizing for the tweet?
Yes, in short, yes, because Kyrie has also demonstrated himself in the past to be someone that has been unreliable in other areas or espoused views that kind of led down to this road, like all of Kyrie Irving's public conspiracy talk, all of him missing games for various things, the vaccine conversation around him and the way he's presented himself publicly. I think, yes, all of that works its way into where you would look at an "I'm sorry" and say, all right, how am I supposed to believe that at this point based on your track record and based on what this has done and affected publicly here? Because this is also happening because Kyrie Irving is good enough to return to play, right? Like if Kyrie Irving, because... And again, I'm not equating the two things, but as far as infractions involving anti-Semitism, Myers Leonard is always the other name that comes to mind. And he's not playing basketball anymore, and likely is not going to be playing basketball again in the NBA because he's not as good at basketball as Kyrie Irving was. Now, his was also, an anti-Semitic slur uttered in public, and there's, a certain severity to that also exists. But I'm not down, but I don't want to downplay the severity of what Kyrie Irving did because it is very serious, and we are right to take this seriously with the influence that he has. But this is all a conversation because they at some point do want him back still enough as a basketball player to go through all of this, right? Like, think about the other read of this is that the Nets laying this out are doing so to make it clear enough to fans and advertisers and everyone else who can see this that, one, maybe there's some of that team like, hey, we want to feel like we're in control, but two, we are paying this guy a lot of money to be great at basketball, and we'd still like to recoup some of that great at basketball because we believe that's there, or else they wouldn't jump through all these hoops. They would have just released him like so many people called for them to do in the first place.
Yeah, and that's the one that that talking about showing your work. That was one of those moves that it's very clear how people feel about certain things. Where with this, Mike, even as everything's laid out, there's no way that people can check up on the clauses that are for Kyrie's reinstatement. Like, I think there's a reality to the fact that with all this stuff laid out, and as many people are upset or not upset, thinking there should be more or less for Kyrie to get reinstated back with the Nets and back in the NBA. Like most things, Mike, like when you get punished in the criminal court system, he's probably going to get off on good behavior. Like this is probably not going to be as severe as it looks on paper, but we hope that the education is severe for Kyrie.
Well, and I don't think again, outside of the fine, which remember, that was something that they threw out there beforehand that the group that they were trying to give the money to actually denied because Kyrie Irving was not contrite in public after the Nets tried to just trot that out. That was supposed to be the original punishment. And I think that's another part of this, Brandon, is this happened because Kyrie Irving didn't just come out and say, hey, I'm sorry, my bad to begin with. I shouldn't have said and done this and shown that contrition in public. They got defiance. And so now in the Nets' eyes, they've got to, again, the burden of proof is on them to say, hey, no, this guy really means it. And this is how we're going to show you that he means it. And so I Yeah, so I look at this, and again, I don't want to get too caught up on the Kyrie portion of this, because I think at this point people feel so strongly about the Kyrie Irving thing for reasons I don't really want to dive into on here, because a lot of this I think boils back to some people not looking at what Kyrie said as all that wrong or all that harmful, and I just think it is wrong and harmful, and so I don't want to do that on here. It's wrong and harmful, and I think punishing it is understandable, and I think because of the way he went about it, we got to this point now where I look at this idea of punishment and I wonder, could this format be closer to what we've all been asking for as a public, to when an athlete has an infraction away from the court, away from the field, a crime, something like this, where we're all looking and wondering, all right, does this person really think or feel or has done anything differently to show they can go back out there on the court, and we as a public can look at this and feel a little less conflicted ourselves because we feel like this person's done the work. This might be something closer to what we could see from more organizations going forward, depending on how that's received by players' associations. So a lot to digest there. I think it's interesting because right now it feels so different than what we're used to. I know other things have involved this before, but again, high-profile case and even more strict laid-out terms here that make this something to consider. We're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we are going to give you something to consider in the form of Notre Dame's head football coach Marcus Freeman, who's going to stop by and chat with us next. Coach, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask at this point, because I feel like every time we talk, what's the candy jar situation in the office right now? You're coming off Halloween here. We've turned holiday seasons. Where are we at?
I was just asked yesterday by your father. It's a little mixture of some Halloween candy. I'm looking right behind. We do have candy corn, which I hear you're a fan of, but I have to mix candy corn and M&Ms or candy corn and peanuts. Like, I can't do it by itself. And then we got some, I always got my Starburst and Jolly Ranchers, a couple of rich people chocolate, and then it looks like some Sour Patch Kids over there. So a little bit of everything, man.
Hey, listen, Coach, you've said in a lot of aspects this season, consistency and adhering to the process. So I feel like if the rich people chocolate all of a sudden left, I'd be very worried about you.
I'll keep that here for you and Smitty. She's a huge fan, so when she comes up here, we'll make sure we keep that for her.
Now, Coach, you mentioned you got the candy corn in there, which I appreciate. I am a candy corn purist, which I know makes me a little bit of a weirdo, but everyone's got their thing. I was wondering for you, have you started decorating? Like, do you guys and your family start to throw up holiday decorations now? Are you a big Thanksgiving guy? Like, where do you fall on the holiday lines of demarcation here?
You know what? We're a Halloween, and then we kind of get into Christmas, which I know is a huge no-no. You can't skip over Thanksgiving, but we don't do Thanksgiving decorations. It's like Halloween candy, and we had Halloween decorations in here, and then my wife came in here the other day and took down the decorations but kept the candy. And I think the next you'll look up and there'll be Christmas decorations all over this place.
See, Coach, I'm with you on that. I'm a guy that thinks once you hit November after Halloween, you can start to throw the Christmas stuff up because, and for you, Coach, you've been in football a long time as a player and now as a coach. I feel like the relationship with Thanksgiving is a little bit different as a football player and a football coach because you're usually always working, you're kind of around the team, and it's a day. It's not a holiday season. It's just a day.
Yeah, exactly. We definitely celebrate Thanksgiving Day, but as you said, that's usually just a day and a meal. We're usually practicing that morning. We'll have a Thanksgiving meal together, and then here at Notre Dame, we're flying out on Thanksgiving Day.
Yeah, that's true. You guys get set to head out to Southern Cal. So, all right, Coach, nice to meet a like-minded individual on the Christmas decoration front here. It's always good to meet people that understand the finer things in life. But, Coach, walk me through how you're feeling right now, coming off the biggest win of your tenure here as a head coach this past weekend against Clemson. What's it been like in the couple days since?
Well, the reality is wins are short-lived around here, and we're getting ready for a Navy team and a triple option and a completely different offense. As I think back to Saturday, what a special night. It was really an unbelievable experience. You're really happy with the way your team played. We really played well in all three phases. And then to do it at home, to do it against a team like Clemson and to have your fans rush the field, it was an extremely special night that you wish you would appreciate it more than bottle it up. But, as I said, wins are short-lived. Losses seem like they last forever around here, but wins are short-lived, and we got to move forward for Navy.
Coach, had you been a part of a field storming before? Had you been as a player or a coach where the field had been stormed?
You know what? I was asking Laurinaitis, who I played with at college, about that. He said the 06 game, Ohio State-Michigan, was 1 versus 2, and they stormed the field. I don't remember that as a player. I remember being a recruit at Ohio State in 2002, and they beat Michigan to go to the national championship, and I remember storming the field, kind of storming the field, kind of saying, like, what the heck's going on? But nothing was like, obviously, that moment this past Saturday. That was unique and one that's just you'll remember forever.
Did you see anything wild when you were down there on the field? I'm sure it felt like stuff was coming at you 1,000 miles an hour. You got fans in the interview with you. Was there anything that stuck out to you as far as what you saw from the fans on the field?
Well, I remember the police were saying, hey, they're going to storm the field. And I'm like, okay, all right, it isn't a big deal. And we run in the middle of the field, and I can see the fans a little bit, talk to Coach Sweeney for a while, and then we're getting ready to do the interview, and I can just feel people pushing. And I, there's a little delay before the interview starts, and I'm like yelling at kids, like, get back, and nobody's listening. And then we do the interview, which was awesome, and then as we're getting finished with the interview, I'm like, I tell the police, I said, let's enjoy this. I want to stay down here. Let's go sing the alma mater. They're like, no, we need to get out. Like, let's sing. Let's go over and sing the alma mater. About halfway through it, I'm like, get me out of here. And I'm like holding on to the belt of the police officer, and they're pushing people trying to get me out of there. And it can be kind of scary, even for a guy like me with police security, man. It became a little bit claustrophobic, but I couldn't imagine if I was just out there with no help, man. It can be a little wild. And it took forever for our players to get back into the locker room, forever.
Who was the last guy back in the locker room after all that? Who was out celebrating the win the hardest?
Well, the one I noticed was Ben Morrison, because usually after games I call up one guy on offense and one guy on defense, and we called up Michael Mayer, and he said a couple words, and I'm like, let's bring up the young guy, Benjamin Morrison, and everybody's looking around, and he's nowhere to be found, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're going to get into the prayer, and next thing you know, we're about to go into the prayer. Here he comes walking in, and I'll start ripping his tail right in the middle of the locker room, like, we're waiting on you, and this is your moment. But it was those are things that are really cool, man, and I'm sure he was on cloud 9.
I can't even imagine. And there was a lot of stuff like that to celebrate. Benjamin, like you said, was incredible. Michael has another record-setting performance. I know for you, as soon as the game was over, saw a lot being made. You're a football guy. You go and start grinding the tape right away. You want to go back and watch all that. So as you're sitting there in that dark room watching tape after the game, what jumped out to you as far as the things you really liked and saw from your team on that second watch after you had just gone through it live?
Yeah, it was. It took a little while. My wife came up with the kids, and I think she wanted to celebrate and hang out a little bit. And I told her, "Hey, you got to get the kids out of here, and I need to kind of watch some film. And really, the quicker I can watch this film, the quicker I can get home, and then we can celebrate at home." But watching it, the things on offense that I really liked is that I think we only have 1 3-and-out. And the ability to sustain drives and to run the ball and really control the tempo and the time management of the game was huge. And that's something that we knew going into the game we had to do. Defensively, we challenged our guys defensively. We had to be able to stop the runs or the quick passing game on the perimeter. And I loved what I saw early in the game from our defense and stopping the perimeter offense that they had. And then obviously the punt block to start it off, that was huge. That was a huge play for us. And the sustained urgency that we had, like that was a challenge. I didn't want urgency to start the game. It was endless urgency. It never stopped. And I thought until the final, moments ticked down that our team and our program played with urgency.
It was really impressive. By the way, you mentioned the punt block. What's Brian Mason feeding those kids over there in the special teams room? 6 punt blocks on the year now. It's been a weapon. Like, how has that become something that's so consistent? I feel like we can count on something game-changing in special teams almost every week from you guys.
Yeah, people would think that you got 6 punt blocks like you're bringing the house, and we don't. We try to match the number of guys they have protecting the punter with rushers and find different ways to get those guys back to those guys that are protecting the punter. But then once you're back there, it's about execution. The punt block we had, they had 3 guys protecting, we had 3 guys rushing, but our guys were able to execute and find the little gaps that are back there and get their hands on the ball. But I think he must be having something going on outside the meetings that I'm in where these guys must be getting food or something. I don't know what it is, but they're hungry because we've had a couple guys block multiple punts. It's not the same guy. It's a couple guys that are blocking punts, and I think it's a challenge and a competition within that punt block unit.
There we go. All right, there's something going on there. You can leave the investigative journalism to us. We'll get going on what's going on behind closed doors in those special teams meetings. Coach, the other thing I feel like that's going to become like a little bit of folklore coming out of this game, I saw Tommy Rees, your offensive coordinator, doing the interview where he talked about going down to the field to celebrate with those guys and looked over at Jared Parker and said, if we got to run another play before I get down there, just call duo. Just go out there and keep running that football. Like, what was that like for you, that moment, seeing Tommy down there, getting to celebrate with Drew and kind of being a part of that?
I didn't get a chance to see it. I heard about it. He had said over the headset, Coach, can I come down? I'm like, yeah, come down. I said, listen, you better hurry up, because I don't know how long the defense will be on the field. And right when he said that, we went into a TV timeout. I said, all right, you at least got 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Hurry on down. And I guess he made it down in order to before Jared had to call any plays. But, I did hear about those moments with him and Drew and him and Mayer and you know what? As I told the media the other day, that's a reflection of the relationship he has with, Drew Pine. And one week it's the media is talking about how Tommy's ripping Drew and yelling at him through a headset or telephone. The next minute we're talking about how they embrace. And that's what I want from our coaches and our players. That's a real relationship. And anybody that's been in a relationship understands it's not always great and not always rough, but it's real and authentic. And that's what I hope was a reflection of that moment with those two.
And Coach, with Tommy, with a lot of your coaching staff, there's been up and downs in this season. There's been a lot of noise from the outside world about people making comments about this staff. Is that something you've had to address at all? Have you guys been able to kind of block that out internally?
That's my message to these guys is that you have to block out the noise. You have to, it can be so loud, and but ultimately we control the volume. Right? You don't have to read stuff. You don't have to listen to that. But when you're with me, you understand that you got a head coach that has your back. But I'm also going to push our staff to be better. We have to be better. And it's never how you want it, right? And that it's never as good or as bad as maybe you see it or others will see it. But as long as we stay consistent in our belief, right? This road to where we want to go in life, this road and where we want to go this season is not always as we foresee it on the front end. And I think anybody that's achieved success can look back and say, thank God we didn't make split decisions based off of one game or one moment. This is an up and down road, but we have to continue to traject in a upward trend. And that's what we want to do, and that's what I think we're doing right now.
It's definitely happening along the lines of scrimmage. Coach, you said at the beginning of the season, this is a unit and a team that's led by what goes on in the trenches, but how impressed have you been with the way the offensive lines come together and really become the identity for this team?
It's been really impressive, to see 5 guys really from week 2, because Jarrett Patterson missed week 1, but really 5 guys in there, and the consistency and the cohesiveness of that unit. And Coach Harry Heaston, our offensive line coach, has done a tremendous job, but they're playing with so much confidence. I think early in the year we were trying to figure out, I knew I wanted to be an O-line, D-line driven program. I wanted to be able to run the ball, but we were still trying to figure out what was going to be the best plan for our offense. And it's taken some time. It's taken some losses. It's taken some ups and downs to say, okay, this is where our strengths are at this year. And that's the challenge of any coach is you can have a vision, but you got to understand what's the strength of your team. And you can be so bullheaded that you're trying to do something that might not be a strength. But our strength right now is our O-line and our running backs and ability to run the ball. And then for our quarterback to take advantage of the easy access throws that we're able to get. And then the other strength is obviously we got a tight end that's not too bad that we can throw the ball up and he can make a lot of plays. So that's kind of our strength right now offensively.
Yeah, Coach, Michael Mayer is one of the guys. So I also heard from a little birdie, a.k.a. the interview that you did with my father and Stu Gotts, that apparently you called that touchdown to Michael Mayer. Is that true?
I might have encouraged it. I don't know if I called it. I told Coach Reese, I said, hey, man, listen, let's throw a pop pass. Let's try to throw a pop pass to Mayer. And he was as surprised as anybody else. And, he was like, no, let's just keep running. I said, okay, good. Let's run it. You feel good about running the ball. And then right after we ran it again, he said, you sure I could throw the pop pass? And I'm like, sure, whatever. I don't know the play call, but it probably is going to work if you throw something to Mayer. And so he called a great play, a great formation. Like, it's easy to say, throw the ball here, right? That's the easy thing for me to do. But for Coach Reese to call that formation, you snuck Michael Mayer in the backfield and leaked him out, and he was open, wide open. What a great job and a great execution by that offensive staff.
Coach, what stuck out to you about Michael Mayer behind the scenes? Like, I remember early in the season, something that I just noticed as an outsider when Drew was first inserted and there were some struggles going on with the passing game on offense. A ball sailed over Michael Mayer's head, and he was the first person running over to Drew on the sideline, kind of putting an arm around him. He's a guy that has so much ahead of him, is going to be such a great NFL player, and has rewritten these record books, who could have looked at this and thought, oh man, my offensive season might take a hit because of how we're producing right now. And that just really struck me as far as a guy who really seemed to get what he meant to this team as a leader. What's he been like behind the scenes for you guys, as there have been some ups and downs in this season?
He's been the true definition of a captain, and a guy that, yes, we know is probably one of your most talented players, but the hardest worker, a great vocal leader for your program. He sets the example. He not only is the example, he sets it for others, and he's been an awesome leader and captain for this football program, and he's exceeded expectation. As hard as it is to say that, he's exceeded expectation. He continues to get better and better.
What was that message from him and the other leaders of the team when this season did hit some turbulence? Because I've talked about from the outside, besides the freshmen on this team, the rest of the guys had never done anything but win double-digit games in their Notre Dame career. There hadn't been a lot of that kind of turbulence as of late. So how did you see those guys manage that internally in that locker room?
Well, I think it was their ability to really just stay together. Trust each other, continue to believe in the things that, we were preaching as a coaching staff, but also the ability to say we have to enhance. We can't just trust the process. We have to fix it and to really put in that intentional work and block out the noise. It's easy to be a leader when things are going well, but I've challenged those guys when things aren't going so well. That's when our leadership will show, and they've done a great job of continuing to lead through the good and the bad.
Coach, what's the biggest thing for you you mentioned challenging everything and elevating that standard. What's the biggest thing for you in year one as a head coach that from week one until now you feel like you've gotten a better handle on or feel like you're doing in a better way now?
Well, I think the biggest thing is, as I said earlier, is that understand that the vision you have before the season starts, it's never going to be like that. And when we imagine being national champions, or we imagine the success that we're going to have, you don't imagine some of those difficult moments that you have, but the ability to handle them, the ability to be a leader when things aren't going well, and the ability to know where you're going. I know where this program's going. I've always known where this program's going. Did I know exactly how we were going to get there? No. Did I think it was going to be at a point that you've lost 3 games this season? No. But you know what? It doesn't mean that we can't get to where we want to go. But that road isn't as smooth as we always foresee it. The ability to really manage during those ups and downs is what real leadership means. And I'm learning every day what it means to lead, and especially at a place like this.
Coach, you mentioned it's Navy week. You have a lot of familiarity with them from playing in the American against them when you were at Cincinnati as a coach, now at Notre Dame. What's the message to this team this week against Navy, and really for the next couple of weeks, as now you don't get opponents with a number attached to their name on the left-hand side. These aren't the big, high-profile ranked matchups that everyone could maybe naturally get up for.
Well, I think the message will continue to be the same that it's been. It's never been about the opponents, it's been about us and our execution and our improvement. And you know, you look at the Marshall game, the Stanford games, even some of those games we won. It's a lot of it has been about us and our mistakes or our, you know, execution of the game plan. And that's what it will be this week. We're going to have to make sure that we're ready to go. We prepare the right way, and then we go out Saturday and we play to our standard of Notre Dame football. Because when we do, we can beat any team in the country. But when we don't, we can lose any team in the country. And we have to make sure that we are really dictating the outcome by the way we perform.
Awesome, Coach. Really looking forward to it. Always appreciate you giving us some time and catching up here. I look forward to seeing the Christmas decorations up in your office the next time we talk.
All right, Mike. Look forward to seeing you in South Bend soon, brother.
Absolutely. Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
All right, Brandon. Nothing left to it but to do it. The question that people all want to know the answer to. Do you know what time it is?
You don't stop, rock the rhythm, that, and the third. Pull the ripcord.
As always,
with the parachute flyer.
As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. As Brandon absolutely took the Sugar Hill Gang out behind a woodshed.
Hey. And they deserve it. I don't want to shit on the founders, but if you do your research, that was a bunch of plagiarism left and right. But it was the first rap song to make Billboard charts, the first Billboard Top 100. First time the rap song was on the Billboard charts, 1979. Sugar Hill Gang. Y'all know that song. About 17 minutes long, the real version. I just tried to force my way through.
Y'all know that song. Brandon clearly doesn't. I do when I hear it, Mike. I do. And don't get me started, Mike, because we got to ask more questions. I'm gonna save an episode, but the fact that you said the first rap song you heard was in 2009 or no 2002, we got some questions. I mean, I was a little white kid from the suburbs who wasn't exposed to a lot of other things outside my small little bubble.
2009. Mike.
No, it wasn't.
You have heard. We're going to go through a list. I got a bunch of raps.
Brandon, it wasn't 2009. It was well before that. Yeah.
It was 2002, but I was doing some research and thinking of other big songs that I know you're a smart guy. You've done your research and you went back and like learned all the things, but we have more to talk about.
All right, Brandon. Well, in the meantime, let's talk about this before we get to that. And this is Brett Favre just can't stop doing terrible things. Part I don't even know anymore. Brett Favre, last time on Dragon Ball Z, was implicated in a case of massive Mississippi welfare fraud. He was implicated in an organization that was accused of defrauding the Mississippi welfare system to the tune of millions of dollars. I think the number was about $77 million, to which Brett Favre was implicated in around $5 million of that. In that case, it was redirecting funds towards the construction of a volleyball facility at Southern Mississippi, his alma mater, where his daughter went and played volleyball. That was the source and the subject of a lot of last time. A person that he had been working with in that process was a part of the group that was actually criminally charged for misdirecting and redirecting these funds away from Mississippi welfare. Brett Favre was not charged. He is not at risk of doing any jail time, but there have been damning text messages that show this guy knew he was doing something wrong in where he was helping get this money from. Fast forward to now, Brett Favre, according to an ESPN report, has apparently also been linked to financially backing two drug companies that allegedly overstate the effectiveness of their concussion drugs and their connection to the NFL. Now, Brandon, the levels to this are staggering because he also apparently helped back these funds, pumping some of his own money and then also trying to redirect some of these same sort of funds that were coming his way towards these concussion drugs, one of which was a nasal spray that was designed to treat concussions, and the other a cream to help limit or prevent concussions. And yes, Brandon, that groan is the appropriate response. The appropriate response as this man continues to descend further and further into villainy.
Yes, Mike. Yes, he is crossed over. We are hearing the reports. We are now. It's like the you know what Pennyworth is? Pennyworth's a show on HBO that's like the beginning of Alfred as Batman's butler, like Alfred as a child, so how special he was growing up. Like, this is the origin story of Brett Favre, the villain. Like, I think from here on out, we should expect nothing but this type of news where Brett Favre doesn't care about people. He cares about money and using people to get to more money.
And putting that money in really bad places. Like, now, I won't say that the Mississippi volleyball thing is, but here, that he also reportedly helped secure $2 million in funding for these drug companies from the same Mississippi nonprofit that he used to help fund that college volleyball thing that came from the money that was supposed to be going to people on welfare in one of the poorest states in the country. And they also, Brandon, apparently on the documents here, Van Landingham is the PhD in neuroscience who is the person actually involved in making these reported concussion drugs, tried to state on the documents that they were sending out to potential investors, overstating the effectiveness, also listing under key advisory members and associates, Dr. Alan Sills, the NFL's chief medical officer, Jeff Miller, the NFL's executive vice president of health and safety, and Brian Hainline, the NCAA's chief medical officer. Both of those groups, the NFL and the NCAA, reached out to ESPN and said none of these people were provided any resources or funding to the company and are unaware of any samples that were also reportedly sent to the team. So they all promptly sent this dude back to the student section. You can go and read the sputtering response of this person who essentially claims to not remember if they sent samples to all of these places and says that we weren't saying they were associated. We were just saying that we had been in contact with them. It is all such a not complete nonsense burger and a farce from these people. And it's another reminder, this is someone Brett Favre looked at and said, oh no, this is a place to not only park some of my money, but to park some of other people's money to fund these nonsensical ideas.
I mean, they're not nonsensical, Mike. They're not real.
I mean, they're predatory.
Brett Favre, the poster child.
Yeah, they're somewhat predatory, trying to present these as easy solutions to a complex problem and one that is a big part of the sport that he played. Yes,
definitely. It'd be like if it was a weight loss pill or a weight gain pill, and I'm the spokesman for it. Like the fact that Brett Favre is selling concussion medicine to people, random people. This isn't just like Gold Bond or Copper Tone, knee sleeve. Like, we know that Brett Favre might need that. The concussion nasal spray, Mike, this is dirty.
Oh, yes, it does. It feels vile. Like, all of this feels vile. And again, we talked so much the other day about process and listening to Jim Irsay at the press conference with the Colts really not have any semblance of a process. I encourage everyone to go read the ESPN report about this and listen to this Van Landingham person go and try and defend and explain and absolutely fail miserably in the process. So this is a good reminder that Brett Favre, what he is doing is bad. Like we said, villain is starting to become a very applicable word to Brett Favre. We do not need to tie Brett Favre to Kyrie Irving. The whataboutism that we've seen some NBA players going to does not need to happen. Brett Favre does not have a boss that is a current league, a current professional team. For people that were saying, why hasn't he been forced to issue an apology? To who? The public? Like, we're all condemning what Brett Favre has done and will continue to. The situations are different enough to where comparing them, I think, robs both of the severity that exists and that we need to address in each one. So let's not do that, because we don't have to, because we can say that Brett Favre and what he's doing is BAD, big ass bad, all by itself. Brandon, let's move on to things that are less bad here and get to that. So we had midterm elections going on, lots of that in the mix, and one tweet, as we got into that midterm election eve, political Twitter and sports Twitter started to have the crossover that occurs when you have funny things like large senators and congressmen and things of that nature, and then tweets like this from Charlotte Alter, who's a senior correspondent at Time Magazine, who tweeted that Chuck Grassley, who was elected back into the Senate in Iowa, is 89 years old, will serve another 6-year term in the Senate in Iowa. She said, and this is the tweet, quote, Chuck Grassley, 89, who was born before the invention of the chocolate chip cookie, will serve another 6 years in the Senate. And everyone had a good laugh at that one, Brandon. I saw our friends over at the Dan Le Batard Show use that as the stat of the day. They have gone on to list a number of the other things that the 89-year-old Chuck Grassley is older than, and also point out that he is not the oldest sitting member of the Senate as well. So all of those things were an objectively funny part of a night that has a lot of seriousness to it. But Brandon, I couldn't stop there. Decided to dig a little bit deeper here because I was interested, like, older than the chocolate chip cookie. Well, who invented the chocolate chip cookie? Went and did a little digging. Ended up finding this over at eater.com, and I want to give credit to Claudia Geib, who did the homework on this. Brandon, the chocolate chip cookie and the date that was attributed here for its invention was in the 1930s. And it was attributed to Ruth Wakefield, who was a part of the original Toll House cookie, folks there that became what we know today as Toll House. Yeah, so Ruth Wakefield
shout out Ruth.
Is credited for popularizing the chocolate chip cookie and developing the recipe that we know today. But as far as that particular date in the 30s, there's some people that dispute that. Stella Parks, who's a pastry chef and author of Brave Tart, Iconic American Desserts, found newspaper ads from as far back as 1928, a decade before. So 1938 is that date sort of attributed, describing chocolate chip cookies for sale. They also described that in the 1930s, they were in major supermarkets, regularly baking chocolate chips into cookies. And according to Parks, who did some of that research, a lot of the conversation around the chocolate chip cookie with Ruth Wakefield was, this happened, accidentally. She was in the kitchen and, some chocolate chips managed to fall into the batter or any of these number of things. A lot of people around Ruth Wakefield said that's not how she got down. She was pretty exacting. She was pretty dialed into what she was doing in the kitchen, very purposeful. And so that didn't really line up with the Ruth Wakefield that they knew. The actual origin of the chocolate chip cookie itself may be a little more in line with just a little bit of laziness. Parks points out that it was much more likely that it came through as a variation of what was the popular drop cookie, the chocolate jumble. The chocolate jumble. Ooh. The jumble in some recipes called for up to 2 cups of chocolate shaved into the dough. And damn. That's hard. That's a lot of work. And so there was a thought that maybe at some point someone just decided to chop a chocolate bar up into small chips, and then the chocolate chip cookie was born out of that. And so maybe Chuck Grassley is actually older than the chocolate chip cookie, or maybe the chocolate chip cookie is a little older than we gave it credit for and was a bit of a crime of laziness. Either way, shout out to Claudia Geib at eater.com for doing the homework and getting us closer to what I think is the origin of the chocolate chip cookie.
Yeah, Mike, but also shout out Ruth.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You got to give her maiden name. Yeah, got her maiden name Graves. Graves Wakefield. I've been doing a lot of research while you've been talking about the research that you did. And died at 73, Mike, which seems really unfortunate and young. But maybe for someone who's born in 1903, it was a long life to live because...
Honestly,
I just wanted to make sure her short demise wasn't tied to.
You think 73 is short?
Chip cookies, and maybe it was, huh?
You think 73 is short?
What? For a lady, yes.
Oh man, I don't know. I
thought women live longer than men, don't they?
But again, you talked about.
Anyways, it seems like the chocolate chip cookie may have kept her alive.
Yeah,
longer.
We can't rule that out. Every time I see a person that's over the age of 100 on the news, they're always like, I ate dirt or 3 Diet Cokes a day and chain smoked cigarettes, and I'm 120 and all my doctors are dead. So yeah, it's the Alex Kirshner principle. Life is short. Eat at Arby's. And eat chocolate chip cookies because that's always cool too.
Hey.
Yeah. Talk about it.
By the way, life expectancy for women, 2022, 81.1 years old.
So I'm saying she did pretty good considering she was alive and like kicking it during the 30s, inventing chocolate or helping to continue to advance the agenda of chocolate chip cookies.
I can't imagine. She's from like Boston area. I can't imagine how hopping the Boston area was in the 1920s in your 20s.
Oh my God. Especially if you're the person that's out here getting credit for inventing chocolate chip cookies. Like, could you imagine someone who walks in and is like, hey man, listen, I got something I want to show you. I've been in the lab, pen in the pad, trying to get this damn label off, and I think I've really found something.
Matt, like, honestly, we talked about smells yesterday with Jess and Charlotte. Walking in any room in the 20s with some, everyone's hopped up on, I imagine, some really potent cocaine, and like the smell of chocolate chip cookies comes in. They're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah. Am I high or does this smell great? This might be the drugs. This
get her over here.
This might be the drugs in the bathtub gin talking, but this is phenomenal.
Oh, club. What's the club in New York? We're gonna get off of this, but club. It was like the swingers club, like all the celebrities were at in New York. Is it Club 70, Club 23, something?
Club 23 was the small dive bar in South Bend, Indiana that used to serve frozen Long Island iced teas. So no, it was not Club 23. Also, by the way, shout out to Ruth. Like, I know this is a Levitard show bit, but we don't really make a lot of Ruths anymore. I think the last Ruth is going to end up being Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Damn, we need to get up on that. I think somebody needs to be in charge. Studio 54 is what I was talking about.
That's the one.
That was 1977 to 91, so that would not have been around.
I was just gonna
while
say.
Ruth was cooking.
Now I want to imagine what it would be like taking those people from the 20s and putting them in Studio 54.
You know what it is? It's the one that was it's the Cotton Club. We've all heard of that. The Cotton Club was around from 1923 to 1936, and yes, I imagine it had some negative inclinations around that. But
name
that was the
makes me
one.
uncomfortable.
Well, it's the Knickerbocker Club from the 1871s that make me uncomfortable.
Yeah, nope. It's all bad. And how we got from a conversation about cookies to people high on cocaine and drinking bathtub gin in the Cotton Club being introduced to said cookies is the difference that you're only going to get around here. Brandon, let's get to the third. So this was an interesting saga that happened yesterday where we had seen slow leaks about the NFL's head coaches being ranked as a part of a list based on the algorithm called the golden ratio. For anyone unfamiliar, there is a model that's built and designed to measure beauty based on the symmetry of a person's face. And the idea is the more symmetrical a face is, the more beautiful a person is supposed to be objectively considered to be, mathematically considered to be.
Right.
I want to give a shout out to Mike Tanier, who's a senior analyst at Football Outsiders. Apparently, this was sent around as a press release to members of the NFL media yesterday. Little hurt, Papa NFL, that didn't make the list on that. I'm old school verified, so you can trust me.
Wow. Yeah, no.
But either way,
that's something you should have.
Mike Tanier put this list out on Twitter for the people that weren't a part of that as the list of handsome NFL coaches ranked by the Golden Ratio app. And Brandon, I want to just give you the top 5 because the top 5 will tell you everything you need to know about how wild this list is. Number 1 on the list is Cliff Kingsbury. Unsurprising that any sort of objective measure would lead him to be a very handsomely considered person. Number 2 on this list is Brian Daboll. Yes, appropriate facial response.
Okay, listen.
No,
if we're talking about symmetry,
I want to get to the top 5, and then I'll let you react to that because there's even more shocking ones. Number 3, Lovie Smith, who, you know what, I can understand that one. Lovie's got a great beard, all those things that can generally lead into this. A very symmetrical looking face, so totally understand that. 4 and 5, and I'll even throw 6 in here. Andy Reid at number 4. Frank Reich at number 5, and Falcons head coach Arthur Smith at 6.
So I have since we're talking about it now. I don't have an issue with. I probably don't have an issue with 1 to 5, but 6 throws it off for me because I don't think Arthur Smith's correct?
Yeah.
I don't believe his face is doing anything for anyone, not even in the symmetrical conversation. All the rest of these people, I think about one half of their face, I'm like, oh. And I see the other half of their face, I'm like, okay. Right? Like, I see that with everyone. Brian Daboll, I think, is a little bit different. I think they're definitely favoriting the beards for symmetry. Like, if you have the same amount of length on one side, it may, like, kind of boost it, the reins of it, because Andy Reid with that mustache. And then I think Frank Reich, like, honestly, he's probably one of the more handsome coaches in the NFL, period. Obviously, he no longer is a coach in the NFL, but up until last week, he was.
I think Frank Reich was, like, handsome in the Mad Men era. Like, he seemed like he would have been really at home on that show.
But John Hamm is still handsome. So he kind of gives me John Hamm vibes.
I think John Hamm, more of that conversation is around, like, gray sweatpants season and the folklore surrounding that, but...
Stop. No one's thinking about John Hamm's penis.
I think a lot of people are thinking about John Hamm's penis.
Okay.
The other ones that were surprising on here, like, as far as, like, over-under properly rated, Kyle Shanahan at 7, properly rated. Like, you know, looks like he could be on Succession. Like, all those things are pretty accurate in his description. Yeah. Rob Saleh at 11 seems a bit low given what the golden ratio seems to skew, which is, especially for bald guys, it seems to help in the symmetry conversation, because for guys like Matt LaFleur, who's all the way down at 23, I wonder how much of that is his hair being factored into this, because the hair is not symmetrical. It's got the cool swoosh because he's got a cool eye haircut.
And also, when it comes to symmetry, Mike, there's no way that thin-ass chin strap is even on both sides, or that thin-ass mustache.
No, but, like, he should not be below Nick Sirianni. Nick Sirianni and Pete Carroll tied at 19 is also a huge mindfuck. Like, I don't know how those two things are supposed to be the same, and I don't know who should feel weirder about that.
Oh, Pete Carroll should be in the top 10, no?
No, Pete Carroll looks... Pete Carroll, I think...
Come on, Mike.
I think the Levitard Show Looks Like game has done Pete Carroll looks like an Eastern European grandmother before.
No one is saying Eastern European grandmother isn't adorable.
Well, adorable and objectively handsome are two different things, although maybe it's not. The other one that I had a real big issue with was Dan Campbell down at 25, and maybe this is just me bringing his physique into it, but he is grizzled in the ways that I appreciate.
No. Because Dan Campbell has the face of an old European grandmother. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, I think Dan Campbell looks more like what they trying to say Pete Carroll looks like, because Pete Carroll's got that smile, and Dan Campbell has a scowl. And I think that is a big, like, obviously Lovie Smith isn't smiling a lot. Brian Daboll is smiling a lot. Cliff Kingsbury isn't smiling a lot. I don't know, man. This is I want to see the back end, because it seems like a hodgepodge, but I do think Andy Reid is an attractive young man. I do think Cliff Kingsbury is an attractive young man. I think Lovie Smith is an attractive young man.
Although you're calling all these grown old coaches
handsome.
Young men. At Gojo Show on Twitter. Let us know who else is over, under, or properly rated on this list. It's fascinating to look at here.
The cutest coaches list.
The cutest coaches list, where Kevin O'Connell is somehow at 32. Kevin O'Connell, who is like a delightful young lad. He's one of the younger coaches in the league. Very boyish. Like, I don't understand how he wound up down at 32 and who he hurt as a part of this golden ratio process. So at Gojo Show on Twitter is where you can tell us which NFL coaches you think are objectively the most handsome based on your golden ratio. We hope that by any metric and any means, you think we're a handsome podcast and you enjoy hanging out with us. If you did, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, and review Gojo wherever you get your podcast. Leave us a 5-star rating and a review. And also make sure you check us out on the DraftKings YouTube channel, where you can see our page under the Gojo with Mike Golic Jr. playlist and see things like Marcus Freeman, who is an objectively handsome head coach in the world of college football, live in living color on our YouTube page. Thanks so much. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. We'll talk to you tomorrow.